I am Raymond Posch, and welcome to the New Ways of Being podcast. This is episode 3, and I've had a change of plan. This one is titled My Stories, and the one on channeled teachings will be in episode 4. Today, I want to take time to tell you about myself and how and why my life has led me to producing this podcast at this time. Now, if you know me from the Our Spiritual Life podcast, which is coming to the end of its 4th year, this is really the next phase for me. And it's really the next phase for you too, because many of us are choosing to participate in the awakening and evolution of mankind. Before I continue, I'd like to remind you that you are a spiritual being, whether you know it and feel it or not. And so I would suggest that you right now tune into that spiritual being part of you right now. And with that, I'd like to add, yes, you are most definitely having a human experience, but knowing that we are part of something much larger, which is consciousness itself, seeking to experience life as divine beings in the physical world of life on Earth. And to me, that makes all the difference. And I hope it would for you as well. We are being invited to shift from ordinary, struggling human beings operating from limitation to be creators who are consciously creating new, extraordinary life experiences and having unlimited potential. So with that said, that actually provides some context. That's where at the end of my story, I'm ending up, I'm understanding very much what I said to you. So let me back up and tell my story. And actually, I'm going to, I'll tie it together into a full story about me, but I'm going to present it as a series of small stories leading from my past up to today. So let me, I don't know if I've quite done, I know I've not done this before, kind of laying out my whole life history, and I'm not going to do it in detail. It's going to be a bunch of small stories. I don't want to bore you to death. I want to give you some insight on where I'm coming from. So I grew up as a child on a farm in Missouri. And you might imagine some of the things that might go with that. But I was very big on going off on my own, exploring the woods, finding Indian relics, and many other things. And so over years, as I was from a very young age, I was out there in the woods at 4 or 5 years old and up into being a teenager. I really found a theme in my life, and that was I loved exploring. I loved discovery, finding new things, and I loved learning in general. Now, my mom and dad were very religious Catholics, and so I had that religious upbringing, and that factored into it. But as I will tell as I proceed, maybe not so much, but I'll explain that as I go along. One of the episodes or stories I remember in my life that might say a few things about me is that I think when I was either 10 or 12, my dad showed me how a rifle worked and how to shoot it. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. I know my dad went hunting, and I had seen him go off to go hunting. I'd never gone hunting with him, but so I went out into the woods and I saw a squirrel's nest up in a tree, fairly high up, and I'm not quite sure why I chose to do that, but I fired a bullet into that squirrel's nest. And the thing that happened then was that instantaneously I regretted that. Uh, I I thought that probably the squirrel was not there, but if it was, I probably had just killed a squirrel that I really at that point knew that I didn't want to do. There was no reason for it. Even though I have uncles and brothers who go hunting, and I don't complain to them about it. I knew that that was not for me, and in fact, I never did do any type of hunting, and I never touched a gun again in my life up to this point. So, I grew up. I loved school, and then I went off to college. And the big thing that happened to me there is that in I think it was actually the fall of my freshman year, I read a book that made me do some rethinking about what I believed about God and religion. And I decided at that moment to become an atheist. And I was an atheist for 20 some years and very comfortable in that way of being. And I think at the time that I made that choice, I think I really had belief in a divine being and religion mixed together. And, I was one of the things that I felt was not right about Christianity and the Catholic version of that was the belief in hell. And I could not understand how a loving God could have such a thing as hell. And I still believe that. And I've had God tell me many times there is no such thing as hell. But I rejected that, and I rejected God too at the time. And well, one of the reasons for that was back in the 1960s, and the materialistic scientific point of view was very strong then. And the book that I had read at that particular time gave me a way of viewing the way that the universe works as it said, and the author of that believed that the nature of the universe was a progression, a flow. And the universe is a flow in many ways, but that scientific point of view never, it caught on for a little while. And there was a major university that taught from that book, but at any rate, it still was kind of a mechanistic view of the universe, which I no longer believe at all. I very much believe in a living, conscious universe. There's so much evidence that has been found for that, and I talked about that in the last episode a little bit. But so that put me into being an atheist for many years. And I graduated with a computer science degree and went into a career in information technology. And that was a long career. And one day, I want to tell a little story about something that happened. One day, I was at work. I was working as basically a software engineer, and I decided to go to a bookstore not too far away, which was a computer bookstore, and just look around, get away from my desk for a little while. And I went into that bookstore. I saw a book that struck me as being fairly interesting. I opened it up to a random page, and there was my name. Now, in a number of my Our Spiritual Life podcast episodes, I've mentioned a spiritual event that played a major factor in my life, and this is that event. So I suddenly saw my name in this book. I did not know it was going to be there. I was shocked. It's like if you're in an airport and someone calls out your name and wow, what's going on? But it was quoting very extensively an article that I had written and had published in Software Magazine. And so I thought, well, that's pretty interesting. I debated, do I want to buy this book just to have a copy of it with my name in it and my article? And I decided not to. It was a very expensive book, $50. And so I went back to work, and I continued to think about that. That was such a surprising event. And the next day I decided, well, I am going to get that book. I went back to the bookstore, and the book was no longer there. And I asked the clerk about it, and he said, oh, well, that we've taken that to the back. Not too many people have been interested. It doesn't look like we're going to sell it, and we're going to ship it back to the publisher. And I said, well, I'm going to buy the book. So I did. But that was a part of this event that made it so striking to me, because I realized at that point, if I had not gone to the bookstore that previous day and discovered it, found that I was mentioned in this book, and and in fairly glowing terms, the author was saying that this is exactly what he was talking about, and that's what his whole book was about. But if I had not gone back, if I had not discovered it that preceding day, I would never have known about it. So I was immediately struck that this is more than a coincidence. This is the universe reaching out to me and wanting me to know about this for some reason. And I believe that. I mean, many people could totally dismiss this as being pure coincidence, nothing to think about. But to me, for whatever reason, I knew it was meaningful, that there was an intelligent universe that I was kind of dismissing, I guess, as an atheist. And it was that it's a personal intelligence that could reach out to me. And so, in fact, I thought that the message that was being given to me was, I'll put it into words, although, they didn't come into my mind that way, but it could have been said to me this way: wake up. You need to know that there is much more to this universe than you comprehend. And you have a purpose that you have not yet realized. And so with that in mind, I set off on my spiritual exploration, going to bookstores a lot and doing a lot of spiritual exploration, trying to find out, how does the universe work? How do I understand this? I don't think I want the Christian approach to this kind of understanding. So I set about exploring. And because I am an explorer by nature, as I've mentioned, I didn't want to go just find one spiritual teacher and that was it. I wanted to explore a lot of different points of view, find out what many different people said about it, what was being taught. And so that's what I did very heavily over those next 10 years, but continuing on up to today. And the conclusion that I eventually came to was that, and it is the point of view that's called, what is it called? There's a name for it, and of course I'm not coming up with it at the moment, but it's the a particular world philosophy. And I remember reading the book by Aldous Huxley on that subject, and I don't recall the name of the book off the top of my head of either, but the conclusion that I came to was that there is an intelligence in the universe, and religions call it God, but many well-studied people who had explored spirituality in depth, and many of the best well-known spiritual masters taught this in effect, although sometimes in different kinds of words, that there is one consciousness in the universe, and human beings are a part of that one consciousness. Our individual consciousness is a part of one universal consciousness. So we are a part of something much greater than ourselves. And more than that, that there is a wholeness to the universe as a result of that one consciousness creates the physical realm. And so we are part of that. And so everything, in fact, is tied back with that holistic concept to being a part of one great consciousness, one infinite being. And so we have a oneness that results from that we are connected to all people and all beings, and in fact, everything in existence. So that was fairly profound, and it's led me down many paths. But I'll tell you that it wasn't really until more recent years that I've begun to dig much harder into the implications of that. So let me go on for now. So over those next 10 plus years, I continued that exploration. And one night I woke up with a very strong calling. I knew it was a message being given to me by the universe that was important. And I had just at that point discovered this concept of wholeness, but I really had a very limited understanding of what it meant. But the message that I received was, learn to experience wholeness in yourself and then share that experience with the world. And I've sometimes put it into other words, but the experience of wholeness really, I eventually understood, was a key part of that. It's one thing to have a conceptual knowledge of it, but it's something much different and bigger and deeper and more profound to have the experience. of wholeness. So that's after that, that was a key part, but the key part of what I was wanting to understand better, to understand wholeness. And I discovered that there weren't that many books about wholeness, a handful, 4 or 5 that talked about it. And some of those talked about it in a different way than I might have been looking for at that time, because some of it talked about it very conceptually and didn't talk about the experience. So I continued on with my career and on with my hobby of studying spirituality. Another time, I woke up with a message again in the night in my mind, and the message was, bring wholeness to everything you do, and it will change your life. And so that kind of motivated me even more to understand wholeness and to, try to find the experience of wholeness. One of the things that helped me do that in a way along the way, I remember in the year 2007, there was something big going on in spirituality at that time, and it was called the oneness blessing. And it originated out of India with a man and his wife in India. I'm not going to get bogged down in all the details. I'm trying to keep going through this fairly rapidly, but they ended up creating what was called the Oneness University in India. And people started going there and getting training in how to be what was called Diksha givers or oneness blessing givers. And many people did that. And subsequently, I don't recall now how it came to me, but I discovered that I live in Denver, Colorado. There was a woman in Boulder, Colorado, who was a trained Diksha giver. And she basically coached people in oneness and would give the Diksha blessing and in her home. And so I signed up for that. I went and received the oneness blessing. And it was one of the most striking experiences in spirituality that I've had in my life. For those of you that know Reiki, or Reiki rather, Reiki, it was, I've been told it was like a Reiki energy experience. So she placed her hands on my head, and she said she didn't really do anything more than call the universal power in to giving me the universal blessing. So she said, it's the universe that's doing this, not her per se. And so what I felt then was this very powerful experience of energy, very warm. It had a power to it. I guess I can't explain very well. If you had Reiki, you probably know what I'm talking about. But I felt that energy flowing down from the crown of my head down into my body and through my neck and throat. And I think pretty much coming to rest in my heart. And then a series of visions or experiences came to me. I saw a vision of the two people in India who created it, and if I recall their names off the top of my head, I would, but I'm sorry, I don't. Um, and they were there and guiding me. And then I felt what I would describe as an explosion, a great energy kind of opening me up. And I um, and I believe I was laying on the floor at that point, and uh, I saw this vision of Indira's net. It was like seeing many lights, or I I think they've in the past been explained as diamonds, but diamonds are many different individual points of light uh, in the sky, and that I could tell that they were all interconnected. I think it was like with beams of light, and um, then it eventually came to an end, and uh, after she gave the oneness blessing to everyone, and we talked about it, and she asked each of us to describe our experience, and I did, and I was the only one that had anything quite as profound as that. Some may have had a sense of awakening or opening, but nothing that they described as a visionary experience and felt experience quite like that. So that impacted me, and the 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 feeling of that experience faded over time. But I think one of the things that it did give me and leave me with was a quieter mind and a stronger sense of oneness in the world, and that's what it was intended to do, to help open us up to oneness. Okay, let me go on. So I continued on in my career. For a number of years, I was an IT project manager. I eventually began to be kind of grow tired of corporate work life. Corporate work life has lots of ups and downs, lots of stress. Many times we have when we work for a corporation is we have a strong feeling of this work is not as good as it should be, for the good of mankind. As most companies tend to be very profit driven, et cetera. So, at any rate, I subsequently at a point in time kind of semi-retired, and I wanted to pursue a spiritual training business as an entrepreneur. And so I pursued that, and that didn't really work out for me. I pursued being a life coach, which I thought would be quite rewarding. And I actually kind of tested it in advance with a couple of test clients. And but that didn't work out for me either. The marketing part of that just did not come together for me. So at the end of that, that kind of continued on for several years, but I did a lot of struggling to find my way, basically. And, I had issues that came with that. Along the way, there was one very interesting thing that happened to me. I started trying to connect with God more, and I wanted to do it in a real conversational mode. And suddenly I was able to talk with God more in a conversational way. Ask a question or say something and hear a response, and I respond again and hear a response. And that was very powerful to me. Now, one of the things that really struck me the most was that God emphasized to me, start a podcast on spirituality. And I mean, to the point where, the next time, I don't know if it was the next day or several days later that I talked with God, he repeated that, start a podcast on spirituality. And he said, this is important. And by the way, I don't specifically think of God as male, but I say that more he out of convention. It came to a point though where I realized that when I would ask God about my finances, and I was struggling with my finances at that point in time, and how, please help me. And I heard the answer is that a small miracle is coming your way. It never came my way, and I realized that was my own imagination that I had inserted into that conversation, and that subsequently led me to doubt my ability to talk with God in that particular way. And so that kind of never happened again. But what did happen was what I would say it was a big miracle. I have no doubt that it was a miracle, and it was a big miracle. It wasn't a winning the lottery. It was something very different that I've never told actually anyone about, but I'll tell you. And that is, one day, my daughter lives on the opposite side across the metropolitan area of Denver from me, so I don't see her and her family all the time, but she homeschools the grandkids, a boy and a girl. They're now teens, and I think this was back in 2019. My wife and I had just bought a used Odyssey, a minivan, and because we like to have something that could haul around big things in. And I think my daughter took her car into a shop. I picked her up, and then we went and picked up Will, the boy, my grandson, at the charter school that he goes to twice a week, and then headed back to our house where she was going to wait for her car work on the car to be done. And not about a mile, no, about a half a mile from where I live, there's a high school. And so when we were on our way home, we go past the school, in fact, turn right at the school to a street. And the high school had just let out. There was a lot of traffic there. And I was sitting in the left turn lane. We were sitting together in the car in the left turn lane. And I thought it was that clear to go, but I think I was not looking carefully. It was probably the stupidest thing I've ever done. I went ahead and turned left, and then saw this car coming right at us, and it was less than 10 feet away and not stopping. And I knew we were going to be hit. And then suddenly, I had driven on through out of the intersection. And I said, that was a miracle. And it was strange because my daughter and grandson acted like nothing had happened. Although right when we saw the car coming at us, my daughter had said, "Dad," in a really terrified way, like, "You've killed us." But we were not hit. And later that night, I reached out to God again and asked, was that a miracle? And God said, "Yes, I did intervene for you. If I had not intervened, your grandson would have been killed there. My daughter would have died in the hospital. The other driver would have survived, but have gone to the hospital. I would have been very shaken up and oh, pardon me, moments there, the emotions hitting me pretty strong right at the moment. I would have been, God said to me, you would have been shaken up, but survived, but you would have never forgiven yourself because your daughter and grandson died. And so I knew that was a miracle. I figured probably no one would believe me. And so I never told anyone. When the event was happening, I did not hear the screech of brakes. And so I can only imagine that it was a Matrix-like event where there was a suspension of time for everyone except me and my daughter and grandson in our car, and then things resumed. But I've always been very thankful for that miracle. I would not have forgiven myself without that miracle. So going on with my life, I had several years of trying to make business work, or a couple different businesses work, not really succeeding very well. And so was in very serious financial shape at that time. And I eventually realized that I had to clean up my finances, deal with all that. And I think it's in A Return to Love. Marianne Williamson talks about the necessity of cleaning up after ourselves when we've learned our lesson or when we've surrendered to God and said, guide me. So I did that. I worked to clean up the finances. I'm actually still paying off some debts, but I decided that I really needed to go in a route of pursuing more of what I love the most. And I love spiritual learning. I love the spiritual podcasts that I have been doing for 4 years. And in the past, I had loved folk music and being a folk singer. I had taught myself to play guitar, and I was pretty good at singing and playing guitar. And so one of the things I did is I became a folk singer for seniors, senior living facilities, and I've done that for almost 2 years now. It will soon be 2 years, and so I continued on with my spiritual podcast, but I did have a certain amount of uncertainty about how to proceed with awakening, and if I was supposed to be a spiritual teacher or guide of some kind, what exactly I was supposed to do. So some very interesting things began to happen to me with my guests on my Our Spiritual Life podcast that began to help me understand things that I needed to learn. And certain messages came to me, certain books. One of the guests that I had on my show had written a book called Surrender, or might have been The Power of Surrender. I've forgotten exactly now, but that book was a factor, and so I decided to surrender more at that point until I sensed that I was being given clear messages of how to proceed. And one of the very clear messages that I got was keep learning, keep working on awakening. And so I did that. And that so that over the last 2 years in particular, it's been a process where I've actually done I've continued with the Our Spiritual Life podcast, and but otherwise, in terms of making a decision of how to proceed beyond that, I didn't make a decision. I held off on making a decision. And not that long ago, might have been 2 months ago now, one of the books that I was guided to was The Wisdom of the Council by Sarah Landon. And that book is totally channeled from a group of ascended masters that she calls the Council of Earth. And that's different than some other channelers have a council they interact with as well, but evidently it's a different group of beings. And this book has been profound to me. And it's why episode 4 of New Ways of Being is going to talk about channel teachings. And I'll talk a little bit about that book, but it's not going to be a total in-depth specifically on that book. I'm actually going to have a guest come who is also a channeler, and we're going to have a very interesting conversation. But this book has been profound to me. And one of the teachings in the book from the council is we get more of who we are. Now, some teachers teach, we get more of what we think about. And so I've learned that's not exactly right. We get more of who we are. And if we're thinking about something that changes who we are, then yes, it can have, it can manifest specific results. But I think that's why I never had very good luck in my attempts to manifest, because I was not bringing that vision or those ideas enough into my being. If you do that and change who you are, your very nature, who you are being at this point in time and going forward, it can have profound effects. And so I've been living through that process of looking for my next calling. Let's put it that way. And so some callings have been coming to me in the last month or two. And one calling that's very much related to that book that I mentioned, The Wisdom of the Council, is be the creator of your life experience. And now. So I was being pushed to step more into the active role of, some people call it manifesting, but creating my life experience and doing it as the creator. Now, a lot of teachers, will argue that we need to talk in terms of co-creation because it's always with the partnering of the universe. And that's true, but the flip side of that is that we are the universe. We are the divine. We are God manifesting as a specific human being. And I talked about that in episode 2. And even though I've known that for a long time now, I've not been able to totally live into that being the creator. And now this book is helping me understand it better and to do that. So I am stepping up to that calling of being the creator of my life experience now, not in the future, right now. And it's like I had 3 callings coming to me pretty much at once. The second calling is focus your podcast on new ways of being. So that's why this podcast exists. And it's definitely focusing on the being part of that, helping people step into being in the world in new ways, being more awake, being more into their creator power, etc. And the third message was become a way shower. And I understood that to mean someone who helps lead others into new ways of being or to show the way. But I have a very clear understanding. It's not that I am an expert in some particular way of being. It is that I am an explorer, that I am open, that I am stepping into this process of being the creator of my own life experience. And interestingly, the book, The Wisdom of the Council, has a chapter called Be a Way Shower, something to that effect. And it talks about being a way shower in those terms. So a lot is changing. I am being influenced strongly by that particular book. And also there's another book that Sarah Landon put out together with Mike Dooley. Some of you might know Mike Dooley as the creator of the Notes from the Universe emails. And he asked a series of questions, and the council responded. And it teaches some other things that are quite powerful as well. So I hope that this gives you some appreciation of where I have come from and what I've gone through in my own spiritual growth and awakening up to now, and why I'm doing what I'm doing through, particularly through New Ways of Being podcasts. And you may have also picked up some indicators of how this is going to lead forward in the future, the future of this podcast. So that's why I've done this. I hope this gives you some better perspective about me as a person and as a podcast host and as someone trying to bring you really good information and guidance in new ways of being. And I do want to emphasize at this point that another part of New Ways of Being is going to be an associated community. I'm working on that now. I've not launched that yet, and I will be doing that hopefully in the not too distant future, within a month or two. When you're setting up a new website or a new community, it takes work to get that together in the right way and to build it out and to have it structured right and to have good information contained within it. So I'm in the process of that and look forward to that. And as I have in the past two episodes, I said, I wanted to point out I love all of my listeners, even though I don't know you in person. I want the opportunity to probably get to know as many of you as I can in person, and that's going to be through the community. But right now, because we are all part of the divine, all part of one consciousness, we are all part of this oneness, this wholeness of the universe. And because you obviously want to learn about new ways of being in this world, or you wouldn't be listening to this podcast. I connect with you. I want to support you. So I also ask if you can, I invite you to become a supporter of the podcast and community by pledging a monthly amount on my podcast website, which is hosted on Podbean, by the way. Your financial support, no matter how small or how big, will help make this service possible. Right now, I only have options of between $1 and $10 per month. So in the future, when this is more in place, I may add a higher dollar level for those who can afford it. But right now, if you can do that, go to my podcast website, and it is at www.newwaysofbeing.world. And the www part is required. So www.newwaysofbeing.world. And as I said, in episode 4, I will explore how, and a guest that I will have with me will explore how guidance from ascended masters can speed up the process of evolution or of healing ourselves even, and help us experience life in profoundly more joyful ways. So look forward to that. That is going to be a great episode. It's going to be my first one with a guest in New Ways of Being. I'm looking forward to that. I want you to also understand, those of you who are very familiar with Our Spiritual Life podcasts, which has over 100 episodes at this point in time. You can view, if you are in that situation, new ways of being of how our spiritual life is going to continue in the next phase. So let me conclude by saying, may you awaken to your true divine self. May you know great love and joy. May you know yourself as creator within your own creation. May you experience a wonderful life with everything you desire. And may you participate ever more fully in the evolution of human consciousness. And let me say one more thing is, everything in what I just wished for you there, I know is possible for you.